Hello everyone! Getting back to our discussion about 100 brachot a day, here is the question. Are women obligated? On the one hand, says the Halichot Beitah, a beautiful book written by Rab David Auerbach, there's no reason to exempt them. Because if you go back to the reasons as to why this was enacted, according to Rav Notrai Gaon, it was because David HaMelech saw so many people were dying every day, and this buttressed it. Or according to the Rokeach, it's because there are 98 curses in the book of Devarim, and we have to buttress it with 100 blessings a day, 2 more than the 98. And number 2, he says, it's not a time-bounded commandment. It's an obligation that exists all day and all night. And from this perspective, there's no difference between men and women. But on the other hand, the Shut Ateret Paz of Rav Zvichi says that this might be a mitzvah tasei shahazman grama, a time-bounded commandment. Why? Because it's an obligation each and every day. He acknowledges that since the majority of poskim say it's rabbinic, it would be a time-bounded rabbinic commandment. So let's start with that argument. There is a huge general argument if women are exempt from time-bounded commandments that are rabbinic. According to Rashi, women are obligated in time-bounded rabbinic commandments. And that's the way Tosfot medayek from Rashi. Tfilah derabanan hi, umay mitzvah tasei shayech ba. Davening is rabbinic, and therefore there's no reason to exempt them. However, Tosfot himself says that in his opinion, women are exempt from time-bounded commandments that are rabbinic, because Hallel is a time-bounded commandment that's rabbinic, and women are not obligated in it. And this machlokes goes on in different places. On the one hand, the Orchot Chaim, written by the Ra'ah, one of the Rishonim, says that women are obligated in the 3 meals of Shabbos because it's only a rabbinic commandment, and even though it's time-bounded once a week, they are obligated in all mitzvot aseh derabanan, af al pi shazman grama, shaveh ben ba'anashim, uven benashim. And ultimately, the Tosfot disagrees. He says, if that would be the case, then how come regarding Megillah, Hanukkah candles, and the 4 cups of wine, the Gemara needed to say women are obligated because afhem hayubo otahanes, they were part of the miracle. If they're obligated in rabbinic commandments anyway, why did you need an additional reason? Explains the Maharam Mi Rutenberg, I'll tell you why. Because a special commandment that was enacted for remembering a miracle, there you do need a specific reason to obligate women if it's time-bounded. But if it's just a mitzvah like Shalosh Shudas on Shabbos, eat 3 meals a day, then you don't need a special reason to obligate them. They would have been obligated anyway. But the Tosfot is very adamant, using as his convincing logic that if they would have been obligated anyway in time-bounded rabbinic commandments, why did you need a special reason for Megillah, Hanukkah candles, and the 4 kosot at the Seder? In the words of the Chida, Dvarav Kashim, B'Chanukah v'dalet kosot mitzvah derabanan, ulechayev nashim itzrich letam, af hen hayu bo'tahanes. If indeed they were been obligated in all the time-bounded commandments that are rabbinic only, why did we need a special reason for Hanukkah candles, Megillah reading, and the 4 kosot that we drink at the Seder? This is a machloket that's ongoing, and if you wanted to end there, you would say, okay, time-bounded commandment rabbinic, we'll have to basically say it's a machloket. According to Rashi, they are obligated. According to Tosfot, they're not obligated. And that's what Rav Zvichi does bring in his Shut Ateret Paz as one of the many options, and I quote his words, that Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, ve'er Orchot Chaim, the Nashim chayavot b'mitzvot aseh derabanan shazman grama, women are obligated in time-bounded rabbinic commandments. Nashim yayu chayavot b'din mea brachot b'chol yom, then women would be obligated in this obligation of 100 brachot per day, because it's a rabbinic time-bounded commandment. However, maybe the whole assumption that it is a time-bounded commandment is incorrect. Because indeed, the Magen Avraham says, look at the Kesef Mishnah regarding Kriyat Shema. The Kesef Mishnah says that even though rabbinically the rabbis limited Kriyat Shema in the morning to the first 3 relative hours of the day, it should have been just like the night. Once nightfall comes, you have an obligation to say Kriyat Shema all night, because it says B'shoch B'cha, when you go to sleep, people go to sleep at different times. Same thing, says the Kesef Mishnah, should have been true regarding the morning. People get up at different times, so therefore the entire day should have been a time for Kriyat Shema during the day. The only reason why they limited it to the first 3 hours of the day is for a technical reason, because they said that we have to lismoch ge'ula la tefillah. The last bracha after Shema in the morning, Ga'al Yisrael, has to be exactly right before the Amidah. Since the Amidah is only to be said 4 relative hours into the day, the rabbis, made a takana that you can only say Kriyat Shema until 3 relative hours into the day. But on a biblical level, B'shoch B'cha uVekumecha are parallel. And just like Kriyat Shema, the obligation is all night, on a biblical level, Kriyat Shema is all day. Based on that, says the Magen Avraham, we have a big problem, because on a biblical level, it is not a time-bounded commandment, it's all day. Then how come women are not obligated in it? And therefore that Kesef Mishnah is very problematic. Plugging it in to our question of 100 brachot, the Teretz Paz, Rav Zavichi says, 100 brachot is a commandment all day and night. Either you count from the morning or you count from the evening, but it's not time-bounded to a specific time during the day. And if that's the case, based on this logic of the Magen Avraham, you would obligate women, even though it's an obligation that renews itself each and every day. In a word, it is not a time-bounded commandment. And the book Halichot Olam, written by Rav Ovadia Yosef, indeed says that it is not a time-bounded commandment and women are obligated. And from this perspective, they have to make it up in their own way, because they don't wear talis tefillin. Usually they can't, and therefore they can't count it in. His son, the Yalkut Yosef, repeats this and basically says not only is it they more at a deficit, they're at such a deficit because in their opinion, meaning Rabbi Ovadia and his son, they're not allowed to say the brachot before and after the Shema, since they're exempt from this perspective. If they'd like, they can daven the Shmoneh Esrei of Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv, and if they don't want to, they have to fill it in other ways. Not to mention the fact, as we said earlier, there are other reasons for the 100 brachot a day. If the whole reason for the takana was because to save them from the curses of Sefer Devarim, and in addition to which people were dying every day, so we have to add blessing to the world, comes along the Shuta Teret Pas and says, what's the difference? The bottom line is that men and women were dying, and men and women are equally cursed if they don't follow mitzvos, and therefore they would be as obligated in this commandment. Quoting the Gemara in Kedushin Tabla Medalad Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Gavrei bai chaye, nashe lo bai chaye. If the mezuzah is there to guard us, Laman Yebuye Mechem v'Yimei v'Nechem, so you should have a long life, as we say in Shema, then women need as much life as men, and therefore they're both equally obligated in mezuzah. So if this is to save us from death, God forbid, or from curses, God forbid, women and men are equally obligated. But next time we'll see a whole group that say women are not obligated, not because it's a time-bounded commandment, but because of a totally different other reason. God willing, next time.
I keep going,